So in India, when someone dies, we say they expired.
When I got to visit Italy, is exactly the same accent, just in Spanish.
Why do I need to let my accent go? It's my accent, that's my identity. I come from India, it is my accent.
If I speak Spanish to a group of Hispanics, I will speak with a blended Spanish. So generally, even Hispanics cannot guess where my Spanish is from.
Not to do that, but to say yes and no.
Not in between.
Not in between.
Welcome to another episode of Happily Ever After with the Raj family. And today's episode is on communication and misunderstandings in our interracial marriage.
That's
so
right.
How is that dynamic?
It's going to be a real tough one because I come from a British colonized country, India. So we have a lot of conversations, words, phrases that is influenced by British people. So for example, we say water, here it's pronounced differently. We say aluminium, here it is aluminum. Party. So there is a huge difference in pronunciation, but not just that. There is difference in phrases. So in India, when someone dies, we say they expired. When I first used it in the US, it was like expired.
Not a product.
Exactly. But it is a common phrase in India. This so-and-so expired on so-and-so day, you know. Or the other one would be he met with an accident. She met with an accident. And I remember one of my brother's friends laughing at it. And how could someone meet with an accident? So that's a difference that I faced when I came from India to the US. Are there any experiences like that for you?
Oh, my life is a mess when it comes to specifics because, as I've mentioned before in other episodes, I was born in the States, but it was like I was in my own little world, which was my family at that time. And it was Hispanic church, Spanish-speaking house. So going to Argentina, that's where I feel my country experience began because that's when I went to school, that's when I started just connecting with people. And definitely I would say that it has a strong European. Argentina is 90+% European countries that move there. So it's colonized by a lot of Italians, Spaniards, even Russia, Germans. So it has a lot of other countries that have moved there, and there's even colonies, Russian colonies, and German schools. Like, there's a lot of that happens. So you're there, and it's like, I guess it happens here in the States as well, probably, different communities, different groups and languages. But I feel that there it was even more. So you have I always grew up with different accents and backgrounds. Like, it was never a one or two option type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a mixed. Already my family was a mix. Then friends and connections were a mix of around the world. So it's hard to pinpoint. And yes, Argentina has a very unique accent. So most people coming there, even if they have an accent because they come from another country, they learn kind of the accent of the country, which when I got to visit Italy is exactly the same accent, just in Spanish. So going to Europe really opened my eyes to the influence that it had on Argentina, because our accent comes straight from Italy, basically. And so I was like, whoa, that sounds like Argentinian speaking, but in another language. So it was super cool just to connect that our countries many times have been formed and influenced by other places. And then we're all interconnected in ways that sometimes we don't even know.
Yeah.
So I guess communication in Argentina itself is very Italian style. The accent, the mannerisms, we use a lot the hands, we use a lot like strong language in the sense of not strong words, but more loud, and I guess that is similar to Indians. Like we're not
One of
quiet.
the one of the things that I did notice when we both initially started spending time together, or even before that, is to notice that how you converse with your family. It sounded the tune sounded very similar to Italian. I was like, wait a minute, because I don't know much about Argentina besides Messi. Okay, besides Messi, I didn't really know much about Argentina, and so which means I didn't know about the culture, how the languages were spoken. I mean, I knew it was Spanish, but nothing more than that. But then when you spoke with your family and to hear this Italian tune coming in, I was like, okay, looks like there is an influence of Italian in their language
Yeah, no,
and also the hand motions too.
big time, big time. So that's how I grew up in my family. We always spoke like that with family members, gatherings was always like that. Then when I was 18, I went for 1 year, a mission year to Colombia, and every single country, and that's something about the Hispanic culture. Some people think, oh, Hispanics eat rice and beans, and Hispanics speak like Mexicans, but it's a lot more. Like when you travel the world and see other countries, you're almost like, okay, we speak Spanish, so we kind of understand each other. But when I went to Colombia, how I say beans is different there. How I say squash is different there. How I say strawberries, popcorn, everything, they have a different word. So I had to learn like another set of vocabulary for their things because for me it was like, what is this? What is that? So you see it, and there's a lot of other words you can try to explain and communicate and ask questions, but you realize that every country in South America have different words for different things. So Spanish, it's a base language, but every country has totally different accents and totally different words for I don't know, 50% or maybe 40% of their communication. So that is huge within the Spanish speaking countries.
Wow.
And so it's just, yeah. So when I was in Colombia and I had my accent, people would say, when we go out to like the shops, don't speak Argentinian because they would immediately be like, oh, you're from Argentina. And, what about Messi or Maradona, like the people that know the players? And so they were like, this can get you into trouble just because, if it's foreigners, they will take advantage, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, I need to try to really not accentuate my accent but blend with theirs. And I focus so much that I got their accent. And now even Argentinians, if I speak Spanish to a group of Hispanics, I will speak with a blended Spanish. So generally, even Hispanics cannot guess where my Spanish is from. They have guessed that it's from Colombia because I guess I was there for a year and then that's my Hispanic option that I turn to when I speak with Hispanics that are not from Argentina. If they're from Argentina, then I transition more to that. But if someone is like, speak in your accent from Argentina, I feel kind of shy because they don't, and I just want to blend in with Hispanics. I guess that's kind of the bottom line. I don't like to stand out. I prefer to blend in as much as possible. But when it's family from Argentina, then okay, I switch more to it, but it mixes now at this point. So yeah,
I
communication is all over the place.
I think it has its pros and cons trying to blend in. Even when I first moved to the US, I didn't want people to see me as out of the group, You wanted to blend in. Like I wanted to blend in and I wanted to be part of the group. And sometimes people would tease me for my accent. And I was like, no, I need to let my accent go. And then few years later, I am recognizing, why do I need to let my accent go? It's my accent. That's my identity. I come from India. It is my accent. And soon I started seeing that people really appreciated the authenticity of an individual. If they are from South America, they wanted that accent to be there. If I'm from India, they wanted my accent to be there. They didn't want everything to be blended, and I didn't want it to be blended either. So, though initially I tried to remove as much as accent possible to make it Americanized, I didn't. Later on, I was like, no, as long as people can understand me,
Yeah.
I'm fine with it because that is who I am. I'm from India. I don't have to change into an American completely.
Mm,
I might be in the US, but that doesn't mean I have to make it sound like my roots are from the US.
hmm.
It is not. As soon as they see me, they know I am from India.
No
And
matter how good you speak or
yeah, yeah. And for me, it sounds so fake to have an Indian skin, Indian face, and have a sound that is Americanized. So
mm.
I was very
I
determined.
mean,
I am not going to have an Americanized accent totally. If there is a little bit of an influence, that is fine as long as people can understand me,
mm.
as long as there is a conversation that can happen decently, I'm fine with that.
And I think there is a beauty in just those unique things. Like when you
Yeah.
meet someone from Europe and they do have that undertone of an English with a specific accent, it's like
Hmm.
it brings you back to that place in the world.
Exactly.
So you can travel around the world with accents, cultures, even if you're not there. And and yeah, as you say, I totally believe that we should not all have the same accent and the same style for everything, but be authentic, unique, at the same time put the effort to communicate or to learn other things from other cultures. I mean, I think it's cool if people can blend in more just for the sake of becoming part of that in their different habits of life. Language is just one, but it can be clothing, it can be different things that you do, and not to lose your identity, but just to try something different and not just be like, oh, this is my way, I cannot get out of my way. So I think
Yeah.
it flexes you in ways that makes you a more holistic person at the end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Something that for me was very unique, and maybe you can share a little bit more about that. How was it for you? Is to see that in Indian culture, a lot of head expressions are very different. I wouldn't say opposite, but just confusing to what the general world, yes, no, I don't know. So those are the general expressions that I know from at least the Americas. But then this was like, whoa, okay, how do you do that? And what does it mean? And how is that for you to blend in or just help others to understand you?
Yeah. I think if you are an Indian or if you go to India, you will be able to understand the subtle differences. For the rest of the world, it looks like it's all the same, but for us, we can differentiate when you do it this way. You are agreeing to it. You're saying yes. It also means agreeing, like a strong agreement. You can also say no this way. So when people don't have that much time spent with Indians, they don't know the difference. And the funniest thing is when I went to Kenya, that was my first time outside the country. I didn't know people outside India did not do the head wobble. That was crazy. That was a rude awakening for me because when I did that, people started teasing me with the head wobble, and why is everyone teasing me? Like, isn't this a common all around the world? And that's when I realized it was not. So I had to unlearn that I've learned for like couple decades, not to do that, but to say yes and no,
Not in between.
not in between. But and after I learned that, I was there in Kenya for 7 months, so I was being very careful, trying not to do the head wobble, Indian head wobble, so that they won't tease me. But then after I go back to India, guess what? Everyone is doing that. Everyone is doing the head wobble. So I gave in. I'm like, I cannot, because when one person is doing the head wobble, I'll have to do the head wobble too. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's true. That's true. Maybe, no. And I'm trying my best not to follow along with their head wobble, but I couldn't. So I was like, you know what? Forget about it. But then when I had to come to the US, I again had to be like more intentional. I cannot do the head wobble or else I'm going to be teased for the rest of my life. And and I practiced and made sure that I wasn't doing the head wobble. Some guys were trying to make me do it as a natural part of my expression, but I did not, thankfully. But then a couple of my Indian friends come. This is like 9 months later, come to the US to the same school I was studying, and they start doing the head wobble like crazier. And I realized first I didn't take it too seriously. If they want to do it, they can do it. It's just me. And I want to not do the head wobble. But then I realized the more they did, the more I was getting influenced as well. And then I had to tell them, hey guys, you know what? This is just unique to Indians, not all over the world. So you need to stop it. Because if you don't stop it, I cannot stop it. If none of us stop it, we are going to be teased. They're going to mock us. And then, yeah, at one point, everyone stopped doing that head wobble.
That's crazy. It's crazy how when you go out there, you realize the uniqueness of maybe your place or the differences as well in other places. But it's cute. It's definitely important to know these things because if you've never been to India or met, I don't know what other country does it, but if they do, but it's like, wow, I didn't know there was another way to express. You
Yeah,
know, another
yeah.
movement that means something in some other place. So it's super cool. I think cultures is just so rich and so full of variety. And I just love being married to an Indian.
Now, now, I mean, a lot of people see movies and then they learn from that. They are
It's
like,
true.
oh, do you do the Indian head wobble? Have you watched this Bollywood movie? In that they do this, and they ask me certain things. And I come from South India, and I have watched Bollywood movies, but not as much as I've watched South Indian movies.
Right.
So because we have so many languages, so it's not like that.
And
Yeah.
movies can open our eyes to certain things about cultures, but they're not fully either. Like fully meeting a person from there or going to the country. They can give you perspective. Some
Yeah.
are true, some are just movie.
Movie
Like,
imaginations.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like people think United States is Hollywood, and it can be part, but it's not everything. You know, movies have a lot of fake things as well. So,
Yeah.
um,
So I have a question. Did you ever feel in our marriage that we had a miscommunication because of our two different cultures? Did you ever feel like that?
definitely. Well, in our marriage, I'm not so sure at the moment to think of something, but when in our relationship, when we first started, I know that there were different ways of communicating things that for me were like, what is going on? Like, I took it differently. So I remember the first instance was that time, and I don't think we've shared before in an episode, but that we were actually watching a documentary together
Yeah.
with some friends, and then I was distracted with something else that it was not really important, but I wanted to see what was going on. And then Martin, like, kind of very directly told me, like, just watch. And he kind of
Turned you.
turned
Turned
me
your head.
towards watching. Just watch. And the way he said it and how he kind of did it, I was like, okay. And I had, as I shared in the first episode on Our Interracial Marriage, my perspective of how Indian men are like, which I believe a lot of countries have it, not only Indian, it can be even South American, like the macho mindset, the controlling, treating women like they are their servants and they need to manage them. And I was like, I want to be submissive to my husband and I don't want to be the type of lady that she is the macho, but I do not want him to treat me with disrespect or like I'm a little child. Like, we should both be adults and communicate and respect each other's individuality and choices. And so I was like, So I was quiet. I just looked, but I was like, this is just not going to work if this continues like this. Imagine then when we're married. Like, this is just going to be more and more coercion and demanding. And that's not what I feel I want or that it's God's will.
And that
Because,
is after the first time, first and only time, people.
and
She was
so
like, nope, this is not happening ever. So,
yeah, so I was very in our relationship. I was not anymore the mindset of like I just want to be a pleaser and give it time and be the nice girl. I was like I want to be my authentic self and I want to express anything that I don't feel comfortable because either we work through it or it just comes to the surface and it's done if needed because I don't want to wait until months and then that things really burst. So as they come to the surface, we'll deal with it. So I was quiet as the documentary ended. I was like, I think he noticed. I was really like, no words, like kind of, okay, this is something we need to tackle.
and on the other side, I'm like, I know she has drawn cold, and I don't know why. I have no clue why she looks like she's upset, but I'm not sure why she's upset.
So, I had the intention to be very open and clear, but at the same time, and I don't think this is culturally, but this was maybe more just me or how I grew up, like sometimes not knowing how to open up and express everything. So I would fear to sometimes say it right away or in the moment say, hey, don't say it to me that way or whatever. Anyways, so I was like, hey, I just didn't feel okay. For me, you were kind of like controlling at that moment. And that's not how I grew up. There was a lot of respect always, even in my own family, from my parents to us. Like, we all respected our individuality. We never like had mistreatment physically. Verbally, we had things to grow on, but in other areas, there was certain respect given. So I was like, I'm not sure, but I just didn't feel comfortable, and I do not want you to treat me like that. So,
And I was shocked to know that she actually thought I was trying to control her. And then I had to explain to her, see, it is more of a taking rights. It is not trying to control, it's just something very common that I do and we do in India. And it has nothing to do in control, it has nothing to do about doing the same thing in every other aspect. It's just that it was a silly thing, someone was passing by and she got distracted and there was a important thing going on, and then I didn't want her to be distracted but to focus on that so that she won't miss the point. And I think it didn't settle. She was not settled fully, right?
I was like, okay, thank you for explaining like how you view it and that it comes from your cultural way of dealing with things. And you did mention like just watch my Indian friends. Like you will see
Yeah.
that sometimes they do act like that as well. So it's not just me, it's our culture way of doing things. So I was like, okay, well, I'll take you on that. And we kind of agreed that okay, we had explained where we were coming from. Now we understood each other, but that we were going to be more careful. I wouldn't take it as sensitive if he did something like that because I knew his motives and he wouldn't just
Intentionally try to do
in
those things again.
right, he would be more aware how I felt and what I felt comfortable with. So we agreed to that we would talk about it, we come to an understanding and then we try to adjust.
Yeah. And the funniest thing was that that very next weekend, we go spend time with our Indian friends along with her brother. And one of the friends does the same thing to her. She was trying to get up and go somewhere. He's like, no, you sit here. And he turns her position. You sit here, I will go and get it, or something like that. And then I bursted out laughing, looking at her. And then she was like, Yeah, I see.
So I could see it, and then I was at peace. Like, okay, it's just cultural differences, you know. In South America, at least, and United States as well, even though I didn't grow up so much with the culture from United States, it's a lot of like being polite and being careful and like maybe a little too much sometimes, like what people would think, and maybe go a little bit around the bushes, not be so direct. So, South American and United States can be a little bit into that. European is another thing, they're more direct, kind but direct. They don't go around the bushes. But American and South America, they go around the bushes. They want to keep those connections, those friendships, and that status quo of maybe like, you know, I'm a nice person. So it's a lot more sensitive, all of that thing. But not necessarily the same for India.
Yeah. It's not always the same. I mean, they do have respect, they do have chivalry, they do have care, but also there is more taking rights and doing stuff. Okay, he or she is my friend, so I can do that, and they won't be offended because it's not with ill intention. So when we do stuff like that outside India, and if the foreigners to India do not know how the culture is, then it might be taken offense. So
So, I mean, and again, just a little disclaimer here. I grew up in Argentina, but I'm not fully an Argentinian, so anything I share is from my personal experience or my family background. So, because sometimes we put our experience or we put things into countries or cultures,
generalize.
but there's always differences. And like we mentioned in another episode, culture is much more than a country. It's your family, it's your experiences, it's your decisions that makes the culture of your life. So different things make a culture. It's not just a country. So it can be very unique from family to family. It won't be like two alike, but there are similarities that sometimes you see or you grew up with. So,
Another thing that I would like to talk about is um, please and thank you. Please and thank you. That is something we did not use much in India. We did not use much in India. Yes, we are taught in schools to say please and thank you, but the common thing that we would tell our friends. Now, if it is a stranger, if it is from older people, that is one thing. You do say please and thank you. But then when it comes to your friends, someone around your age, and even in relationships, you don't say thank you. It's very interesting because it is like if you say thank you, it is like you're not a good friend, you're not a close friend, you're just a good acquaintance. That's how it is. So that's why we don't say thank you or even please. But after coming to the US, it was very interesting. I didn't say to someone, someone did something for me, and I didn't say thank you because I thought they were good friends. And they were like, wow, this guy didn't even say thank you.
oh,
So, so again,
wow, that's
something
huge difference.
that is something that I had to learn coming to the US because here with friends you say more thank you than ever.
Yeah.
And in India, you don't dare say thank you. If you say thank you, it is like, oh, you don't consider me to be a friend? Why? Because you're thanking me. Oh, oh.
Wow.
So,
I mean, I think you've mentioned briefly that before, but I love gratefulness. Anyone that knows me for some time knows that I'm always into, you know, write your gratitudes. You see my WhatsApp status, and it's like count your blessings. And gratefulness has become a huge thing for me in my life, not only with God, but with everyone, and with now my husband. And so I will say thank you 1,000 times if needed because I feel so overwhelmed and just not taking things for granted. I guess that's one of my mottos in life. Like, truly value and appreciate what you have because they don't have to do this, they don't have to give. So, don't expect things, but be grateful for them. So even with Indian friends, many times I've mentioned a lot, like thank you so much or this means so much, and maybe they invite us and they are feeding us and just a good time, and then I'm very appreciative. But I have noticed that sometimes it's like, oh no no, like almost don't say it, and then I'm like, I mean, I'm really feeling it, but then now this makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's huge.
Well,
It's huge in our country that you don't, if you really are good friends, you don't say thank you. If you say thank you, it is not, it is like
how do
you're
you
not
show
good friends.
appreciation? Just smile and
You
eat
just
it, or
spend time with them. That's the main thing. You just spend time with
okay.
them, eat the food that they give you as much as they pile up on your plate. I'm kidding. But I think it's just a given that you appreciate them because you're spending time with them.
So it's more your actions than your words,
Exactly.
which that's good as well. I
Actions
mean,
speak louder than words.
oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So that is something that I really had to learn coming to the US, and that's why if you see now, I am more of a police in that. Did they say please? Or did they say thank you? Because in this country it is like that. And sometimes when people don't use please, I now that I've been here for over 10 years, I feel like if they don't use please, they are being rude. That thing has changed. But again, my mind changes when I'm with the Indian friends because I don't see it so much as an uh, issue if they don't say thank you or please. But the funny thing is usually they are used to saying that as well because they learned it here.
Something that I have noticed, well, for your previous question, things that we've noticed in our marriage or in our relationship was that first instance on, it felt more demanding, controlling, but we understood each other. And I think the second aspect, it was one time, it was similar. I think you just put your hand on my head and were like, I just felt like, I don't know exactly what you did. It wasn't anything bad, but I just felt like, don't touch my
I
head
said
that
it's
way.
okay or something like that. It's
It's
okay.
okay. And then he grabbed my head, and I was like, why are you grabbing my head? I
No,
was
that's
just.
not how she did. She was upset. She was mad at me. Honey, don't touch my head because of different things. So,
I guess I was hypersensitive that there will be that control, dictatorial type of guy. And I just was like, treat me, but not like that. And that was at the very beginning stages of our relationship. So we were trying to understand each other truly. And with all of the things that sometimes I had thinking how it would be, it was like, I don't want this. If he's different, if he's converted, and if he's truly a Christian, then we can move forward. But if not, it might be just too different. And other girls might be okay with guys treating them more harsh, but I wanted to be treated kindly and gently. And so it wasn't bad. It wasn't harsh, but it was just any little hint. We talked about it if it was like a potential issue.
yeah, and it is only natural for someone to be hypersensitive. Number one, with not so good experiences in the past, and number two, with having a stereotypical understanding of how other culture people are. Like in this case, Indians are, how they are seem to be more controlling and demanding from the wives. It does make sense for you to be hypersensitive in that aspect. But I think one of the best things that did happen is, number one, we both explaining our stance, like what you are thinking, what you are going through, and how it affects you, and for me to explain from my side why it is
Your
why I did,
intentions or
yeah,
motives.
exactly, what I did, and it's not anything that is for control, and then also to learn each other's culture, miscommunication or communication, and moving forward from that, because I think it is once you are in a relationship, learning where each other comes from is very vital.
Yeah, yeah.
Without that, it is going to be a hot mess in
Yes.
the whole relationship, which will, of course, go into marriage as well. And the husband trying to do one thing, the wife misunderstanding, and then the wife trying to do one thing, the husband misunderstanding,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So I think that 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 is very vital for us to be upfront, open, honest. What are the intentions, and the other person to share if they approve of it or not,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you are a woman and I'm a man, so
Yeah.
we are wired differently there as well. So there are a lot of variables
Mm-hmm.
that go into it, and to have a happy marriage or better marriage and to have a better relationship, I think the communication helps.
Mm-hmm.
And even when there is misunderstanding, instead of the other party being offended, they can explain why they did what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe if it is really sensitive thing, they can stop doing that,
Yeah.
right?
I
And
mean,
to avoid all of those things, because it does have a very sensitive spot.
yeah, yeah. And I think besides culture differences or, racial differences, it's being really clear, being really
Mm-hmm.
open, and desiring to also not just do, well, I want to treat you like this because this is how, but how do you want to be treated? And can I
Mm.
grow into, because that's what marriage is about in so many levels.
Yeah.
And so, even if we were from the same country, I was Indian or you grew up in Argentina, we might still have certain of those things to
Mm-hmm.
go through and
Mm-hmm.
talk about because we're different individuals that for what I feel comfortable with, maybe you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then are we comfortable to adjust?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we going to be so fixed in our way that we just cannot move forward
Exactly.
together in peace?
Yeah.
So it's part of the getting to know each other phase, and just it has been really a beautiful journey as well for me. The safe place to open up and really be like, okay, this is where you're coming from. This is how I feel. This is to be able to communicate without, like you say, getting, like, oh, why are you feeling like this? Or you're accusing me of being like that. Instead of being upset about the
Mm-hmm.
situation,
Mm-hmm.
being curious about the situation, and trying to know the other person more through
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that I faced in our relationship with the communication was when you would be blunt, when you would be German, and this is it. I was like, okay, can you try it a little more friendly tone? That is something I was like, oh, is this how she is going to be? That is
Mm,
something that I had to go through, and I think I shared with you as well. I
mm-hmm.
think you're kind of like blunt. Yes means yes, no means no. Instead of like explaining and taking it in a little more um, empathetic way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that was one of my biggest things in our relationship, because at that time I realized why people were saying, why do you want to marry a German? Because I mean, it is good in a way, because people are very clear, this is yes and this is a no. But also you can put it in a more kinder way
Mm,
than just being, yeah, I'm just being upfront and being rude.
realistic or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, they might not see it as rude, but
Mm-hmm.
when the other person that is not from that same culture receives it, it
Mm.
is kind of rude. And like, okay, so so I
Yeah.
think that is one of the things that we worked on. I shared with you, and we were able to talk together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, I think, like, I did not grow up in Germany. My mom definitely comes from a German father, and I could see more of those things in her, and I could see more when I was in Europe for a few years, that more bluntness and not going around the bush and being very direct, not unkind, but with not necessarily a lot of feelings towards that. But again, my grandfather was from Germany, and he was always a very polite gentleman, very diplomatic. But I'm not sure, since 17 he was in Argentina, so he could have also changed because of the influence of South America. So I'm not 100% sure, but I know that there is a mix from Hispanic in me, and sometimes more that also like goal oriented and task oriented. And when I'm on a project, I will, go all the way, and more, being on time and stressing about things. So that I can totally see the impact from the German side, because not necessarily South Americans are like that. They're more laid back and like no stress and just enjoy the time. And so I have that yearning and joy about just being more easygoing, but at the same time, when it comes to work and accomplishment, I become Germanish.
That's very true. That's very
And
true.
so it's intense how the blood, the genes, and can just impact you. And
Yeah.
I've seen it, my brother and cousins, and we all struggle with that half German side of us that comes in and takes over our life.
I think.
But it's a blessing because it helps us to be focused, oriented. So every culture has its positive, but also its negative sides that you have to work through it.
I think it is a good trait to have, being direct, open, and honest, but in a more toned way, not so intense, but in a more toned way, and then it's perfect. And that is something that I had to learn in this country when I came to the US. I think I might have shared it before. I don't know if I had shared it. Please skip. That when I first came to the US, I came to the school. I came to the school, and we are used to saying no thank you for food or anything that is offered as a formality. When you say no thank you, it doesn't mean you're saying no. It just means ask us a couple more times and we will say yes. But that day, the first day in school, I missed breakfast because I didn't know where to go and what time the breakfast was served. I had lunch, and then by supper, I was hungry. I was really hungry. And I missed supper too because I didn't know at what time supper was served. And and then this guy from South Africa, he comes and he asks if I had supper. I said no. And then he said, hey, I have a couple apples. Do you want some fruits? No, no. As an Indian, I am trained to say that, and I said that. And then his response was like, oh, okay. And then he took it. That's my first and last time I learned. That's when I was like, if I want something in this country, I'm going to say yes. If I don't want it, I'm going to say no. There is no people pleasing or Indian thing coming here, because then I
They're
will.
not going to repeat it twice and beg you
Exactly.
for it.
Yeah, because in Indian culture, they are going to make sure that they are going to feed you, even if you say no, even if you mean the no, even if you mean that you're saying no, they will still feed you. But here, that is something that I learned, and then I think that's helpful in the marriage too. I can tell you yes for what I want and no for what I don't want.
Yeah, yeah. Communication is an important part in marriage for sure. That's another level of communication.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot to learn and grow. But it's a beautiful thing to be able to grow and to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah. We have come to the end of this episode on Happily Ever After. The title is Our Interracial Marriage.